Well, hello everyone, and welcome back to the All Four Wheels episode with Charlie and myself, Joel. And today we're going to be, you're going to be asking me some questions, I think. I have seen it done before, but I thought it would be a good idea to do an episode asking me questions about what I do, because it does come up a lot, doesn't it? People always want to know things about being a YouTuber or someone that's on social media. And I know that you ask me questions a lot, and we talk about the ins and outs of my business, so to speak, quite frequently. So yeah, I thought it'd be interesting to do it. So you've brought me some questions, have you?
Yeah, I've got some questions that actually, because I do know there are things that I know obviously from hanging out with you and stuff that I know how it works, but also I've kind of tried to think, yes, I might know certain things, but some people might not know that, and there's also things that maybe I don't know. So I've tried to make them as interesting as possible for anyone that might be thinking about doing something YouTube related, that they can factor into when they're trying to start up, or something that you might be able to shed some light on. Maybe not tell all the secrets, otherwise you'll have some competition.
Yeah, well, I think it's an interesting one because so many people want to do it these days, don't they? I think teachers famously say now that when they ask their students or their children in class what they want to be when they grow up, it's always YouTuber. Whereas when I went to school, for me it was, I want to be a pilot, but other kids would say astronaut or deep sea diver. Well, that's a bit probably not at the moment, actually, deep sea diving.
Do kids seriously say they want to be a YouTuber these days?
I think so, yeah.
Because of like KSI and
I think so. I think if you think about
men.
I mean, I don't obviously have children, but from the best of my knowledge, I think lots of kids, that's what they go home and do. If they're not playing Xbox with their mates, they'll be watching YouTube, won't they? I mean, who goes home nowadays and watches a program?
Yeah, true.
We have series on Netflix and Disney or whatever, but I think that is,
it's so easily accessible, isn't it?
Yeah, it's free, and you've just got this endless library of content. And obviously, yes, there were TV shows like, let's say, Bargain Hunt, which I used to like watching, believe it or not. I still quite enjoy watching it now, actually. That's on daily, but you've got some of these kids channels or YouTubers that upload at least once a day, if not more.
Well, you don't have to wait for the episode, do you? You can watch it back to back. You can watch it at your own leisurely pace.
It's funny.
Whereas when we were young, you had to wait a week for,
Well,
anyway.
It's well off topic, but having said that very quickly, Katie and I have just started watching 24.
Yeah.
Which I watched.
That was on when I was at school.
Yeah.
Because I remember the advert for it was that beeping noise.
The noise with the clock.
Yeah.
I watched it when I was much younger, but we've just started watching it again because Katie's never seen it. But it's crazy to think that when they first came out, unless you sort of bought the box set afterwards, you would have to wait a week or whatever the interval was between episodes. I mean, these days, if that happened now, I'd completely lose interest. So anyway, it's an interesting world. So let's answer some questions about it.
So for you out there, maybe this is the bit you've been waiting for a while, some of your followers, to get to know Joel a little bit. They're not too personal questions, but they're more about the scene. So the first one I came up with is if there was one thing about the YouTube car scene you could change, or would want to change, what would that be? It's a bit on the spot, this, but
yeah, it is. It's weird with this. I don't know if I should have read your questions first, prepared or not, but I think it's better this way. So what would I change about the YouTube car scene?
Yeah. Is there something in the scene that, I don't know, people don't communicate enough, or if you actually collaborated with people more, then both people would benefit from it, kind of thing?
Yeah, I think, I mean, to flip it a little bit, I think the YouTube car community or car scene, as in group of people that are YouTubers in this space, I think it's quite a nice collaborative environment.
Right.
It's sort of, I think I said in a previous episode, but if I ever go to an event where there's other YouTube people, we sort of all know who we are.
You're not, do you ever, because I feel like some scenes on there, do you remember that whole Logan Paul KSI, beef? I mean, it was probably fake beef in the end because they're very clever people, but in the car scene, there never seems to be that kind of...
No, apart from Shmee and DDE the other day.
What, that one on TikTok?
The
Because I don't know who DDE is, so I was just like, oh, it's some American guy calling him out. But I've from looking into it a bit that he's quite famous. Like he's got a massive channel.
Yeah, he's similar size, if not bigger, to Shmee in the US, and obviously
it was a bit awkward, wasn't
beef around Tim taking off his logo,
right?
Because they were a sponsor on the Gumball Rally, and Tim took off his logo from his car, which DDE wasn't very happy about, and confronted Shmee 150 about.
It's not very adulty though, is it? I think you would do that off camera, wouldn't you?
I think it sounds like DDE had the right to be annoyed, but why did he need to do that and film
Make a video out of it?
He could have privately spoken to Tim. Maybe he tried to and it didn't work, but he could have potentially done that differently. But
it does seem to be a generally friendly scene, doesn't it?
So
you all want each other to do well.
Yeah, I think back to your question. I mean, there's a little bit of cliquiness. Like, there's a few YouTubers that probably wouldn't talk to me. But generally, everyone's really respectful of each other because we all know what we're doing. We sort of all realise what goes into it. I think the average punter that watches the videos doesn't always realise what work actually is involved.
Well, this kind of leads me on to the other questions.
And there's a bit of mutual respect, I think, amongst YouTubers because we understand what goes into it. But in terms of, there's one thing I would change. I don't know. Actually, it's a really good question.
With the toughest question.
It's a good question. I'll come back to you if I think
if it comes to you, just stop where we are and come back. But this one will probably be a bit more easy to ask because you've now got. When did you? I mean, you first started out. Must have been when you were 17, 18. No. This isn't the question, but
I think I started.
Yeah,
I started doing my YouTube properly back in 2020, so only 3 years ago. But I've had the channel.
But you've been trying to grow your channel for a lot longer, haven't you?
Yeah, 6 or 7 years. Probably.
So my question is, if someone's just starting out now, not even in the car scene, just wanting to grow a channel, what kind of advice would you give from things that you might have learned that actually it took you a few years to realise that actually this could be a waste of time, or you need to focus on one thing in terms of like the most important thing is the quality of the video or the. Do you see what I mean? I think
this does get asked a lot, and I want to preface this by saying I don't regard myself to be a successful YouTuber who knows it all. But one thing I certainly don't like watching, or to phrase it differently, I think the one thing you should really focus on is being authentic and going into YouTube because it's something that you want to do and something that you enjoy, something you're passionate about. You're passionate about creating the content, or at least what you're going to be talking about is something that you are passionate about.
Don't just go into a style of YouTube or a scene on the YouTube scene to think about the end goal of making this, because eventually it will become a chore, whereas you never feel like it's a chore, really.
Well, I think the point is, what I was going to say is that don't go into making YouTube videos to make money.
Yeah.
That should never be the end goal. The reason I started making YouTube videos was I had a passion for making video. I really enjoyed making video. I had a drone and I was doing lots of drone content, sort of, and that was quite early on, back in the Casey Neistat days. And I had a real passion for making video. Then I wound up doing a bit of stuff in the car scene with Seen Through Glass. I sort of did a bit of work for him for around 6 months or so, and then started my own channel. But the reason being is because I stumbled across the fact that you could, as a young driver, get yourself into some pretty handy sports cars for not that much money. So we all knew that you could buy a BMW Z4 or a Porsche Boxster for around $5,000. But what young drivers didn't realise is that you could actually insure them for cheaper than something like a Ford Fiesta. Now, obviously, there's a million variables that go into that based on where you live and whatever. But in my case, when I was looking at BMW Z4s to buy, before YouTube, I was just looking at, I wanted a fun sports car for £3,000 or £4,000 because that's all I had. I was looking at 2-litre Z4s because I thought, I just assumed that's the only thing that I'd be able to insure. And then I found a 3-litre that I really liked, and for a joke sort of did an insurance quote on it, and it was like half the price of the 2-litre. So it took me down this long rabbit hole of realising that actually insurance is calculated in a way that doesn't necessarily correlate with the power or the engine size of the car. And so that's why I started the YouTube channel, because I bought the Z4 and I wanted to sort of tell everyone, look at this amazing thing that you can do. You don't need to buy a Vauxhall Corsa, or you don't need to buy a Renault Clio, or whatever sort of the popular hot hatch cars are that people buy, Fiesta ST. you can actually get yourself into something a bit more sporty, a 2-seater maybe with a bigger engine, and it's not going to cost you an arm and a leg to insure. And what's more is that, you know, things like a Fiesta ST, because so many young people go out and buy them for whatever reason, they end up being really costly to insure. So that's
because
why
so many claims go through on them.
Exactly, because there's so many people driving them. But that's why I started my channel, and I think the reason I've carried on is because I still sort of have that sense of wanting to share interesting cars with people that I don't feel get featured enough, and that is my ultimate goal.
Yeah, because people that I know that don't know you, that might ask what you do, which I've had, you know, recently and stuff, even at work and things, and they say, "What's your channel about?" And I always say, this is from my point of view. You haven't even said this is your, you know, this isn't your strap line for your channel. I always say he buys cars that maybe people have always thought about buying for, you know, the 5-6 grand, if not under, that their wife might not let them buy, or it's not practical. But actually, you can, like you've always just said, you can get very good cars for, you know, not so much money that people just wouldn't, because in this day and age we just fall into a trap of following each other, don't we? It's like, oh, he's bought a Tesla, so everyone buys a Tesla, you know. But you've proven over the years that actually with that 7 Series, I mean, I would never even, I didn't even know it had a V12. I wouldn't even have thought about that car. I'm sure a 7 Series these days, I mean, it's an amazing car, but it's probably not got that wow factor when you're driving it like that thing did.
Yeah,
it's probably electric now. And
yeah, no, exactly, mate. So that's certainly why I did it. But I mean, to answer your question and to give some advice, if there is any, yeah, obviously I could talk about that for hours, which implies that I'm quite passionate about that subject. So, you know, if there's something you're passionate about and you want to share it with people, that's a great place to start. I think when you're initially starting a YouTube channel, do not try and take yourself too seriously. You know, don't overshare things. Just sort of find your way slowly, build up a small audience, and then once you get a small audience that start communicating with you, it makes it a bit easier to be guided on the sort of path of where you're going to go with your channel. But it'll always evolve. But I think it's nice to find a balance between making content that you want to make and also making content that your audience wants to see.
But you can get, like you just said, you can, even with this podcast, we're just getting a gauge of what people like and what works and what doesn't work. I think that's a good place to start, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. But I think what some people fall into the trap of, they start a YouTube channel, they might say, look at my YouTube. They might look at my YouTube channel and say, I want to have a channel like Joel's channel where he buys these sorts of cars and I do this and this and this. But the problem is you're starting a channel with zero audience. So if you just start and make exactly the same videos that I'm making, there's nothing to differentiate you from me. So why on earth are people going to go to you instead of me, for example? I mean, my videos can be extremely boring, so I don't blame you ever. But definitely start doing something that feels natural and authentic to you. And as you grow an audience, you can evolve that a little bit into a more strategic sort of path. Does that make any sense?
I think it does. And actually, then you'll get the balance right eventually of doing what people will want to watch, but also making sure it stays true to you and what your channel's about. So I think that's fair enough. And there's a good bit of advice, as you know, young people. I'm guilty of it. We're all guilty of it these days. Sometimes you think, I'll just do whatever makes the most money, but actually, in the long run, you might regret that because you might have stretched yourself too far early on in terms of trying to please so many different audiences that actually you lose the raw audience that started out with you, which probably a lot of your followers probably have followed your whole journey. You know, you probably haven't lost many of them. They probably still watch you from. No,
it's true. I don't think people don't really go and unsubscribe because you made one video they don't like. It doesn't really happen. So, just one other thing on that, I suppose. It's easy to look at a YouTuber's video that's really polished, and you know they've been doing it for years, so they've got a nice knack to how they edit and create their content. It's easy to look at that and think that's the sort of level you need to go for. And I've seen lots of smaller channels that put in, you know, apparently a lot of effort into camera equipment, getting the latest, most expensive cameras, spending hours and hours on editing, fancy music and cool transitions in their intros, and actually the video is rubbish because it is just that. It's just like nice camera shots, and they're also not particularly good at editing at this point, so it actually doesn't look very good to someone who does edit videos all the time. And you're far better off when you're starting a channel, sticking a GoPro onto the windscreen of your car, driving around and talking about it for 20 minutes, if it's something that you're passionate about.
Yeah.
I mean, look at High Peak Autos, for example. His channel is essentially very rough and ready, and that's how it started, and that's how it carried on for a long time. Now he's evolving into some extra camera shots and stuff. And if you're listening, I don't mean rough and ready in a derogatory way. I mean, it is basically a camera, Matt, and all of his knowledge and all of his wit talking about a car. And the format has stayed the same throughout, which is why his channel's been able to grow and blossom so much.
Okay. This next question I've got for you, actually, I'm kind of referring to maybe like the Paris challenge. You went to Paris with Katie, the race. This kind of says, obviously with a video like that, a lot of planning does need to go in. I know it sounds like it's, it's only Paris, but a lot of planning had to go in so that the race was fairly competitive between the two of you, and the logistics were all going to work, with a lot of risk in there because you've obviously invested time, money. But do you think, kind of relating to that, do you think people realise how much planning and stuff does go into a video? Obviously, the editing stage is a different stage, but with a video like that, it sounds pretty easy, Katie needs to fly there and you drive there and see who wins, but there's a lot of planning that has to go into it, and thought, and whether it's going to appeal to your audience. It's a big risk, is what I'm trying to say. Do you think people do realise how much sometimes planning and risk you sometimes have to take with a video?
I think, to be honest, if the answer to that question is no, and people don't realise, then I, as a creator and a YouTube person, I've done a good job. Right. Because it means I've created a piece of content that actually someone's just watched and enjoyed, and not really had to think about all of that stuff.
Is it a lie? Is it not? Yeah.
So, in all honesty, probably not. People probably don't quite realise how much goes into it. I mean, if we take that Paris challenge, for example, obviously I wanted to do a race. Was that the first one I did of that kind? I can't remember. So it was the first one I did with Katie, I think. Wanted to do a race, typical sort of plane versus car thing, like Top Gear used to do back in the day. I wanted to do my own spin on that, find different sort of route that could be used. Audi were giving me a cool press car, and I wanted to do something exciting with that, because that's the other pressure that obviously people don't really think about with that video, is that I've got this press car from Audi, which is an incredible opportunity. I've got it for a week.
You could just drive it around as your daily and not make any content, but what benefit is that to either party, really?
I want to do something interesting with it so that Audi will give me more cars in the future. But anyway, something like that, obviously you have to look at the logistics of it all, look at the timings, look at potential flight options, where we're going to start from. Essentially, it is all planned to make it as close as possible.
Yes.
So don't go into it completely oblivious to the fact that it's going to probably be quite close. If everything goes on time and to plan, then it should end up quite close. So that's just the concept of the video.
Yeah.
And then after that, obviously, you've got the logistics in terms of booking the flights, looking at travel arrangements, especially for Katie in terms of buses and how she's going to get to the airports and whatnot.
Well, exactly.
Hotels when you get to the other end, because obviously
it needs to be sort of unplanned, that she's on her own. You've got the flight, she's on her own for the rest of it, but you also need some sort of planning to it, because if they're all on all the trains are on strike and all the buses in France, which could easily happen, then the video is then rendered a bit pointless, because you won because Katie couldn't even get from the airport.
Yeah, I mean, something like that, to be honest, that you wouldn't really be able to plan for it if they went on strike.
You could do some looking into it, couldn't you?
But obviously once you've got the concept and you think it might work in terms of timings and logistics and stuff, then obviously you've got to, put the fuel in the car, pay for all the tickets, pay for a hotel at the other end. The thing that people forget, and again, if they do forget, then I've done a good job, is I've got to film it as well. So it's all well and good doing one of these big drives or a race or something, but I'm actually got to make sure that the cameras are capturing it all. I've got to make sure they're all charged. I've got to make sure I've got enough SD card. I've got to get different types of shots, and so actually I've got to pull over at service stations even when I'm trying to race to try and get some tripod shots. So yes, there's a lot that goes into it, and there is a lot of expense that as well. I mean, that Paris challenge probably cost at least £1,500, and it probably made £300 or £400 in YouTube ad revenue, and I don't think it was sponsored. So definitely made a loss on that video. And yeah, it's 2 or 3 full days of my life, or our lives in that case, because Katie was involved. Although we did have a lovely steak
In
and then
Paris.
a nice cheese thing in Paris
So
by
it's
the
all
Eiffel
worth
Tower.
it.
So you make
You made it up to Katie.
you make a trip out of it for sure. And we
Yeah.
stayed in a hotel that she
Yeah.
likes, and so it was great. But what was your question? Yeah, I mean, yeah, I don't think people always realise the effort that goes into it, but I don't think that matters so much. I think if people aren't thinking about that, then I'm doing a good job as a creator and
They
and
were
providing
taking
some entertainment.
People aren't sitting there losing interest thinking, well, how's he done that? Or what is he going to do with that? Exactly what you were just saying. So, yeah. This one, I think, could be my last one, but I think we've talked about it in our podcast already, actually. Not today, but previous one. I have a rough idea, but this is more about your YouTube side of it. Is there any YouTubers, it doesn't even have to be within the car scene, that you might not even know yet, because I know you know a fair few of the YouTubers, or you've met them when you did some work for Sam. Is there any YouTubers you are really looking and wanting to collaborate with, or thinking about something that might be getting close to any collaborations? Because you used to do a lot, and obviously you still do a lot now, but you've grown your channel to the point where actually you don't need so many collabs at the minute, if you see what I mean.
Yeah, I mean, the short answer to that question is no, because my ultimate goal with my YouTube channel is to be a bit like Harry Metcalf, for those of you that know, and have a shed somewhere in a field with a bunch of cars that I like in it, and occasionally I'll get a press car and I'll talk about that as well, and I don't have to talk to anyone.
Yeah.
Because that is my least favourite thing on the planet, is talking to people.
Why are you on a podcast?
Literally sat here talking to you. But I mean, you're my mate,
yeah.
and we can shoot the breeze for hours on end. But I don't particularly like doing collaborations. It's quite stressful. You've got to travel somewhere, and you've got to meet someone you don't really know, and then also create a good piece of content out of it too, that's mutually beneficial. But that doesn't really answer your question. I mean, there are some people that I would like to collaborate with. I know the Drive Tribe guys, Mike Fernie over there, and I have been chatting for a while about doing something with the Jags. He's got a Jag, Richard Hammond has a Jag, and I have one as well, and also Alex Kirsten at Auto Alex Cars. So I don't know if anything's going to come of that, but that's a collaboration that I'd be really excited about, is doing something with those chaps. But generally, I don't really seek it out.
No.
I mean, yeah, obviously if Matt Armstrong sent me a message saying, hey, can we rebuild a car together, I'd think that would be a good move for the channel, and you would probably do it. But generally, no, there's not really anyone that I want to collaborate with. But the other day, it was very pleasing when I saw Harry Metcalf and Jeremy Clarkson did a YouTube collaboration. See, Jeremy Clarkson doesn't do YouTube, but they both still own 2007-8 green TD-V8 Range Rovers. And Harry took his to Clarkson and his farm, and they just literally waffled about Range Rovers for 30 minutes. So
that's your idea.
That's
of
a
heaven,
wet dream,
isn't it?
So that was like a collaboration that I love to see.
Yeah.
But
you don't seek them.
I don't really seek them out. But then again, if a smaller channel that was doing something really interesting asked me for a collaboration, I'd be really keen to try and help them out or to get involved, because I would find that more fun. But I'm not really into sort of, hey, bigger channel, can you please do a collab with me so that I can gain a few subscribers? I just want to do my own thing.
Which is good. I think that means you haven't found a situation where your content is lacking. You always feel like you've got new content to produce, because I feel like maybe sometimes it would be the easy option to say, hey, why don't we do a collab, because I'm going to draw in some of your followers and etc. You feel like your content's good enough and still got so much content to produce and ideas in your head that you don't feel the need so much to do a collaboration. Not that collaboration is a bad thing, but you see what I'm saying. That
it's definitely, you look at Automotive Channels, there's a lot of different styles of it. You've got people that simply rely on new press cars and manufactured cars, and they will review everything and their dog just for content, and that's fine. And then there's channels like JM on Cars, which is completely 90% built on reviewing press cars, but also mainly viewers' cars. So, people message him and say, would you like to drive my so-and-so? And he says yes, and makes a video with it. And the format of his video is all the same. And then, there are channels that are sort of built around lots of collaborations. But mine is, it's actually probably 75 or 80% just my cars.
Yeah, because I think people that don't I know from knowing you, but you do get a lot of people contacting you saying, "Hey Joel, do you want to drive this car, that car?" But logistically, sometimes it doesn't work.
Well, I normally just say no because it's not really what I want to do. And it's also.
But you've had some good opportunities for some good.
Yeah, absolutely.
Good cars.
And there was actually a really cool opportunity that I said yes to, which was a viewer basically wanted to give me his 765 LT for a few days or whatever.
I'm referring to.
But I couldn't get insured on it, so that didn't work. But yeah, I actually do all the time get messages from people, and I really enjoy getting the message from you, and I love talking back to you, saying, "Do you want to come and do a video with my so and so?" But my answer is normally no, because I like doing my own thing in my own car, and also when you go and drive someone else's pride and joy, there's a level of stress there. And I also, from an integral standpoint, as someone that reviews cars, I can never really feel like I can really drive the car in the way that I would want to extract the most information out of it, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
This is why I always say yes to press cars, because that's a very different story. It's, have this car, and of course there's rules and you don't want to take the mick, but you can basically use the car, you get a whole week or 2 weeks or however long it is with it. You can do whatever you want with it. There's no mileage limit. I normally drive them to some far corner of the globe when I have one, and they're very good at not minding what you say about it as long as you're fair. And actually, I've never ever had a manufacturer make me sign something that says I can't be mean about their car, to be honest. But yeah, when it's viewers' cars, it's a little bit different.
Yes, you don't want to. You feel like you've got a duty, seeing as they've been willing to give up their car to you. That you should do. You should be respectful, and which you would be with any car, I know. But to Audi, that S8 that they give you, for example, has already been written off anyway from the start. As in, they've just produced. It's their own car, so they've just produced it as a press car, and was never going to be sold in a showroom, for example.
Well, do you know what you do say that they do?
They do at the end.
They are actually very well maintained, and they literally service them after every load. And just speaking on that really quickly, that R8 that we took, KY22LXL, the red R8 rear-wheel drive that we took to Germany, that's for sale at the moment.
Is it?
Yeah, I think it's up for 115 grand.
I think I remember when we
40 grand off list.
I don't think it was happening too much when we came back, but you obviously had it for a few more days after we got back from Germany, and I came and met up with you, and you would drive. Well, I was insured on it, wasn't I? So I drove it for a little bit, and there was a couple of points towards the end, wasn't there? It was probably, like you say, it goes back in for a service, but the gearbox was getting all clunky. Do you remember? You'd upshift, and it wouldn't upshift for about 10 seconds, and then it would double upshift, which was quite interesting. But again, that's because
the truth is, and it's not the most convenient thing to say, but I've had issues with new R8 press cars.
Right.
That rear-wheel drive was a little bit glitchy, like you say, and also the Spider that I had first time, the roof leaked a load of hydraulic fluid and stopped working, the convertible roof. So it is quite funny. Just a quick question to you then. How would you feel? But, because obviously the red coupe that's for sale at the moment. I
see where you're going with this.
We obviously took that on the Autobahn and maxed it out, would you be put off buying? Because on the one hand, these press cars are always kept to a really high standard. They're always, repaired if the wheels get curbed. They're serviced, properly cleaned all the time. But acutely aware of the fact that
it has been
people
driven
don't
to its
always drive them respectfully. Some channels are built around just drag racing, and they'll just launch these cars.
I think
we top speeded that car. Would you buy one of those?
It's a fine balance, isn't it? So it's obviously going to be cheaper than one the same age.
Well, I don't know, because there's nothing on the listing about its history.
Really?
No.
Well, but Audi would say there's no reason there has to be. It would say how many owners there's been, which is one, how many services it's had, which is untold.
Yeah.
But that's a good thing. So you look at it on the one hand, like you said, that yes, it's been serviced so much that actually the reason people are put off by cars that have been potentially driven by a boy racer, for example, is that the parts are going to be a bit more worn. But if it's having a constant service by an Audi a specialist who is going to literally look out for these things, they probably changed a lot of these things quite often. You might have actually the history of it won't be much won't be an issue, because most of the parts have been checked over so thoroughly all the time and probably replaced.
Well, maybe, I don't know what I'm talking about, and they are actually a little less money, and they probably do have to officially declare its history. But I can't remember what my point was going to be. I don't think I would want to buy.
No.
I mean, if I bought like a BMW M3 and then I realised it was the ex-BMW press car, I'd be really upset. Because, they've probably not always been driven with the utmost respect, like you would drive your own car.
It's like a
bit like a rental car, isn't it? When you go to Spain and you rent a car,
yeah.
Can you honestly, hand on your heart, say that you haven't done things in that car that you wouldn't necessarily do in your own? But then, certainly from my perspective, I always drive these press cars extremely respectfully because I'm very aware that just like if it was a viewer's car, it's not my property. And you've seen this, of course.
Yeah. But
I don't know. Interesting.
It's a tough one, isn't it? But it's like I know people that have bought, for example, like a TV. Do you remember you get stuff that's a show TV, so it's been on the shelf, but you get a discount on it. When you look at it, it's,
Yeah, true. Yeah.
It's not actually that. It's the same TV, but I guess cars are different, of course.
If there was money off, if there was serious money
I think there would be.
Sure.
Maybe it's something you need to look at. I didn't see the listing.
I don't want to say too much because I don't know what I'm talking about. I don't want to upset anyone.
But
yeah, no, I noticed that red R8 that we took to Germany is for sale.
But you never really know how anyone's car's been driven, do you? Because I know people in my past that have managed to clock cars and... Ugh. Well, but how are you, the buyer, going to know?
That's why people do it, but it doesn't mean you should take advantage.
Someone the other day was saying you can't do that to modern cars, but...
I don't know. I mean, I would
think technology's surely going to advance to a point where you probably can't.
Yeah, but I know lots of these brand new cars, they're sort of locked, so you can't even plug in a Carly device and code it because they just have locked ECUs. Right. So I actually have no idea how clocking even works and whether it's I wouldn't even know, but I would imagine it's more difficult to do now than it was.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's just I can't stand dishonest people. That's a whole. But
you are in. Your channel is in the industry of buying a used car, which has probably had quite a few owners. So you're always...
Well, I could do a whole
risks.
episode, and maybe we should do a whole episode talking about dealings I've had with people.
Well,
and listen, I'm definitely not the best buyer of a car, because your ideal buyer, if I put a car up for sale, is someone that messages you, says, "Hi, I want the car. How do I pay you? And can you get it delivered to me?" And you don't even have to see them. That's the ideal buyer. I'm definitely not the ideal buyer, because I will ask a million questions at a car that's £2,000. I say, is there rust here? How many miles have you done? I will ask all the questions. But my point was going to be that I've dealt with so many awful sellers that are completely dishonest. I actually went to look at a BMW 6 Series recently, which I had every intention of buying. It was a 650i, which is the cool 4.8 litre V8. So I was really interested in that. I went with Katie because I was definitely, I was going to buy it. And the guy had literally lied about the number of owners it had. He lied, just straight up lied in the advert about the service record. He also then claimed that because the air conditioning wasn't working, and I said that to him, he said it just needs a regas, and I said, well, look, I think it's probably the compressor, so I'll offer you the money that you want less the price of a compressor. I said 600 quid or something would be what it to fit it and whatever, and he said no. Well, and then I said I'll give you the money back if it does turn out to be a regas, and he said no. He's obviously just lying through his teeth, and he wouldn't even let me drive the thing. But I've had other experiences like that which are just as bad, and I don't know if people would be interested to hear it. And also, Facebook Marketplace is just full, and Auto Trader now, but Facebook Marketplace is full of cars for sale that are either just complete scams, because they're it'd be like a brand new car for £10,000 and it gets you to click on it and then it's actually just a scam, or they are cars that are actually being sold, but then you click on the person or the seller's profile and it's just like a Filipino whatever. And, you talk to them, they are actually trying to sell the car, but it's like, why are you hiding your identity? I don't understand.
Well,
and on Auto Trader, there's loads of and the 6 Series guy was one of these examples. They set up as a trader,
right?
So that you click on it.
But they're not.
But they're not actually a registered trader, and it's just in his house. And it's like, And his reason for that is so that he didn't have to declare himself as an owner on the car,
So
even
it's
though
all,
he'd had it
it's
for a
all,
year.
yeah, but it's all, that's all of it. That's red signs, red flags immediately. But for me, you've always talked to me about buying cars, and I kept saying, didn't I? Like last year, I had some money and I wanted to change. But for me, it's the same with anything in life. But buying a pair of shoes from someone's quite clear cut. I've worn them 20 times. You can see the pictures. Let me have a look at them. Yeah, there you go. There's the money. But with cars, it's such a easily misled. I could buy a car now that looks all great, but because I'm not mechanically sound, there is 10 things wrong that's going to have to be repaired within a year that actually I've just been completely messed up by. And like you say, I don't even really look at cars too much anymore because I don't know what I'm looking for. I always come to you, don't I, and say, what do you think of this? And you will literally give me my honest opinion. Not in terms of what do you think of the car, of I can see immediately this is a bad thing or whatever. But sometimes if I'm on Facebook and I click on Marketplace, even by accident, and obviously there's cars, some people will just put their car up with no description of anything. There's no mileage of it. There's no...
Yeah, that's the other thing.
And I'm thinking, well, what am I buying here?
They neglect to put oh my goodness, this could be an actual topic, but one thing that really annoys me is that you get Auto Trader, you get like 20 photos. I was literally looking at Range Rovers, surprise, this morning, and there was this one that I really was like quite enjoying the look of, and then not a single photo of the interior. I'm just like, what? I mean, I know it sounds...
But it sounds like you got something to hide, doesn't it?
I need... Well, it's not even that. It's just think. I need to see what the interior looks like on an old car.
What you're saying is, think, if you were selling something, you're going to want to give it the best shot of being sold. So you're going to not even go to too much effort and get an amazing camera. I'm saying just give it show as much of it as you can.
Yeah.
If there is a scratch, you might as well be honest about it, because the buyer's then going to be more, if they arrive, and they'll be more willing to negotiate.
That's it, because you haven't lied. You do look at Facebook Marketplace and you see like someone's just posted like half the front of the car and a bit of the wheel arch, and that's it. And it's like,
well, I'm not going to buy it, am I? Or I've seen some people, I don't know if you said this, they obviously blur out the number plate, but if you're going to buy the car, you're going to see the plate. That confuses me.
I know, I don't,
because you want to do a HPI check or something to start with.
Yeah. And if you, there is a whole issue with number plate cloning. So, but I just don't. Yeah, I personally
that would make you click off immediately.
My number plates are all over the place. What are you going to do? Look at my MOT history. Oh no! I mean that does happen. People will literally message you the day your car expires from tax or MOT and say,
really?
Your MOT's expired.
Do these people have a job? Or?
Well, anyway, but it's a whole other thing. But I think there's just a real culture of dishonesty these days. I don't know if it's just around this country or if it's a worldwide thing, but there is a real culture of dishonesty, and it actually really upsets me. I think it's really frustrating, and buying a car is a very stressful thing for lots of people. For me, it's a scary process,
and I'm 26 now. I would not feel comfortable doing it on my own. I would say, I would make you come with me. And if you said I'm busy that day, I'd say, well, I'm not going.
Yeah, it is. And it's also because it's probably the second largest purchase you'll make in your life in terms of the amount of money you're exchanging, less than a house. But there does just seem to be this real culture of dishonesty, especially when people are selling cars. And I know not everyone's like it, but for me, when I sell a car, I genuinely would feel really bad if I'd left something off the listing that was some damage to the car, or a warning light that was on that I didn't say in the description, and someone came down to look at it with the intention of buying it, and then they were disappointed. I would feel really disappointed in myself about that. So,
but as a car enthusiast yourself, I think what you're kind of getting at is you almost want that car to go on to someone who's going to actually really enjoy it and to think, well, I'm really glad I purchased this. When Joel lists a car again, I might have a look at that or whatever. But
certainly that's a whole reputation thing.
But you put yourself in the buyer's shoes, that you're thinking, if I was the buyer, I'd really want this car, the excitement of going to see it and then potentially being disappointed. So you're saying that you would want to give them the best opportunity to be honest and you want to just be honest with them and give them the clearest picture so they can have a better mindset of what they're getting into.
Yeah,
that they can drive away and think, I'm really glad I purchased this, not I'm upset I purchased this.
Like I say, I really, really do dislike dishonesty, and I would personally feel bad if I lied to someone and then they were disappointed with the car. At the same time, it does help you out in the long run, because if there's a slight issue with the car and you mention it when selling it and fully disclose it, then if that issue develops into something worse, the buyer can't really
come back,
complain about it, because I'll say I was really forthcoming about that and I gave you some money off, and I just generally in life being honest with people and being transparent and not trying to swindle people is just a nicer way to live. But yeah, I do find it a lot when trying to buy cars.
But
days.
I've always been told, but brought up, my dad, he knows loads about cars, but I would feel way more comfortable going to a dealer, but I'm paying well over the odds for the car, potentially.
Well, it depends, doesn't it?
But do you see what I mean?
There's some cars I certainly would never go near a dealer for. For example, an older Range Rover, I would only want to buy one of them privately.
But you're running a massive risk by doing that.
No, you're not. No, because the thing is with a dealer, is as I found out with that last Range Rover I bought, it was most likely just bought in from Copart.
And they haven't really looked at it.
Well, it was bought in a dealer trade, yeah. And the reason it was in the dealer trade in the first place because someone didn't want it or it was a part exchange. Then they essentially clean it, park it in an industrial
never been driven by them, so they don't really know what's wrong.
Exactly. And then, they sell it at retail price. But buying a car like that is quite a delicate and fragile thing, I would much rather buy from a private seller who's had it for 7 years. They can tell you that sometimes the right rear wheel clunks when you go over a pothole, and on the summer's day the temperature needle sometimes goes, so you can they know much more about the car. And for something like a Range Rover, I'd be much more comfortable buying it private than from a dealer who is probably
but
just...
you see, but you're running the risk then of not just, I'm not saying anyone's dishonest at all, but you always get people, I mean, I've seen it with my dad selling his motorbikes. People come round and they try and pick apart, that's wrong, but you see what I mean? There's people that are out there to try and, they probably buy and sell cars, but they're out there to come and try and, convince you that actually you're lying about what you're selling, give you money off. And
there's nothing wrong with someone trying to negotiate, but as the seller, you can always say no.
True, yeah.
But someone could come and I could put a car up for £10,000 and they could offer me $4,000 for it, but I could just tell them what, it's they're the ones that have made the journey. So it's just being reasonable on both sides, isn't it? But I don't think it's always as clear cut as buying from a dealer or buying from a private. One's better than the other. I think it depends on the type of car you're buying. Yeah, I think it's an interesting topic. It could be a whole nother topic we could discuss actually on this podcast, is sort of just buying cars.
Yeah.
And maybe how I sort of source the cars that I use for YouTube.
I'd almost want to do an episode where we can even just go and have a look at, we don't have to go in and speak to the person, but I'd like to go with you from your perspective. We can go to a showroom and just have a look round, and I'd say, so what do you think of this? I'll go around, maybe pick a couple of cars that actually I think if I had this much, I'd buy that. And you can say, well, looking at it, what your mindset would be from you've had experience of buying quite a few cars, more than probably most people watching this have. Not saying you're anywhere near the level of a dealer, but what you're saying is you've had experience buying and selling cars every year almost.
I certainly spend about 4 or 5 hours a day looking at cars on the classifieds.
Yeah.
I think, can I just tell you another little story? Fairly recently, I was looking at Porsche Cayennes, and I always am. There's probably a list of 20 cars that I'm constantly checking and looking at the prices of and seeing if I could buy and seeing if there'd be a story I could run with YouTube on. But I was looking at Cayennes, and this one came up that was about half price, in the sense that, it was £2,500 for a 2005 Cayenne 4.5S, and it only had 60,000 miles on it, and it was actually grey with a tan interior, so it was like the spec I was after. But that, if it was perfect and retailed, probably £7,000-8,000. So immediately I was, interested, and the description was all good. It was quite thorough, and it didn't say there was anything wrong with it. The MOT was quite close to expiring, but it had said that it sort of been someone in the family, and this guy had ended up with it, and he just wanted to get rid of it. So I did genuinely think in my mind that, okay, maybe this is a case of someone who doesn't quite understand the value, or they just don't really care. They don't want it. That actually happened with my Boxster when I bought that. I think I bought it at quite a low price for what it was, but they were just really transparent. They were like, look, we normally sell 6-7 figure cars. We just don't really care. Like, have it. So yeah, anyway, I phoned this number about this Cayenne. It turns out it's some dealer. And I said to him, I think I asked him about the service history. I said, look, I get it's, good, I like it. I want to come and buy it. can you just tell me if it has any paperwork with it at all, or if you can tell me any history about the car that I can't find online or whatever. And he's just like, it's half price. I'm like,
yes,
I know it's cheap. I just like, I still want to know a bit of history. And he proceeded to sort of talk to me in that tone. And I just thought, well, I'm just not going to buy a car from you, even if it is free, because it's clearly just going to be a headache. Like, why are you being so shady? And that was the first thing he said. It was like, well, it's half price. I'm like, but I want,
but
how hard would it be to just say, no, it hasn't got any service history, or yes, it does?
Yeah.
It's just like, I get it. I get there's lots of dealers that get things in and out, and, to him, it's probably 200-300 quid profit. So he just doesn't care. He just wants someone to buy it and leave him alone. But yeah, I just don't.
But he could have just taken the extra 10 minutes to do that.
And I would have come and bought it.
Yeah.
But it turns out that it obviously was riddled, because I checked the description about a couple of days later, and it said noisy tap hits, smoke out there. And I was like, so, when I picked up the phone to him when he first put it, he could have just said, oh yeah, no, I haven't updated the description, but it's actually got a few issues with it, so that's why it's so cheap. And I'd have gone, okay, it's probably not for me.
Yeah.
But not just like,
but maybe next time they have a Porsche coming to that dealer, you might be still interested, but...
Well, yeah, I mean, anyway, I have no idea who it was or where they were. It's not like someone I would come and check their car's stock for, but yeah, there's quite a few experiences I've had like that, which could be quite interesting to share.
Well, I remember where I bought my 1 Series from when I was 18. It was in Kent, and they probably had... It was called Big Motoring World.
It wasn't Affordable Cars of Kent.
No, but they had 600-700 BMWs there. If you go on their website, they sometimes have a 488, but do you see what I mean? They just buy cars en masse. And then I met someone a few years later, and I had no issues with the car. The only kind of thing that was weird was that I remember taking it in to where I normally get my car serviced, and they said they've sold it to you with 2 run flats and 2 non-run flats, which is actually, I don't think it's legal. They can't really sell it. It's illegal to sell it like that. Because,
I certainly won't want to drive a car like
that. But obviously I was young and unaware. My dad came with me, to be fair, but I was so, at that age, fixated, and anything he told me wasn't going in. I was fixated on buying that
Apologies
car.
if you can hear it barking. That is my parents' dog, Gibson.
Excited.
He's obviously
Seen
late for his lunch or something. But anyway, you were saying...
yeah, and then a few years later I met someone and I spoke to him about the car, and he said, oh yeah, I used to work there, and we knew the backstory that the owner of this dealership was a multi-millionaire, and he just buys car en masse, and he just flies basically to these auctions in his helicopter and says, yeah, I'll have the whole lot kind of thing, and goes back. Anyway, he was just saying that you really need to check on these cars, because he said, I used to work there, so I know, and because they just buy en masse, they don't, it was a bit like a Range Rover situation, they haven't really checked out these cars. It's just,
it probably comes in, it gets delivered on a truck, no one's ever seen it. It gets cleaned.
All they have is the paper. All they have is the paperwork, the spec sheet,
and
which
someone
I could
puts
read,
it on the website,
which I could read and say, yeah, it's got that. But
that's why I would say it's not always advisable to buy a car, because some people like, and I used to think this. I think I'm only going to, if it's a certain type of car, I'm only going to buy it from a dealer because it's much safer and there's various assurances. But often with places like this, these big car supermarkets, they will buy their cars off somewhere like Copart. They will buy a load of them in. They'll get delivered on a trailer. Someone will then clean it. They'll have a team that cleans it. Someone will then come and take some photos, find out what paperwork's with it, and that's it. No one will touch it until it gets test driven or bought. So I don't think it's always the best option to buy something private, because actually I feel like you will know less about the car because the person you're buying it from is not going to be in the know.
Yeah. But it's interesting, isn't it, that they just buy en masse and try and churn out as many as they can. It's not a bad thing,
Well, it's like my Audi TT I bought for about 800 quid all in, and it's now past its MOT. Okay. And so it means I could retail that car at about £2,000, which is fine, because that's what the car's worth. But I will be totally transparent when I sell it about where I got it from. Well, I don't know, it's a tricky one, but that sort of thing is what these bigger dealers often do, is they buy stuff at auction.
Well, it has made me wonder that you watch someone like a Matt Armstrong. I know he buys write-offs, but Top Gear used to do it. They used to do challenges, didn't they, where they'd all go to the auction and Clarkson would hold out to the end, and then whatever car came in at the end, he'd buy it. But I've always thought I'd love to go to an auction just to see, because
Yeah,
let's say I had 150 grand sat in the bank. I reckon you could pick up something if you went to a proper specialist like Brooklands. They do auctions there. I'm sure you can get something cheaper than you would ever be. Let's say you were looking in the market for a 458.
I think
you'd pick one up potentially cheaper than you would at.
Maybe. I think auctions aren't necessarily always about cheaper. It's more about stuff at that price point. You get more sort of interesting specs that wouldn't do so well on a listing.
But I know with old cars, at Goodwood they do it every year, don't they? It's not
Bonhams.
It's Bonhams, but they're specialising in the cars from the 80s, 70s. Some of these are ranging into the millions. So buying it at an auction is a risky thing, but there is a reason people go to these auctions, because there must be that.
Well, there's a reason
Bonhams
people put their
to
cars
uphold.
into these auctions, because in that environment where it's my so and so is bigger than your so and so.
Yeah, they might.
Some cars that are really one of a kind can often fetch more than if they were just advertised.
Because it's me looking at you across the room thinking, "I want to outbid you here."
And it's difficult as a seller of something like that to value it, because it is very unique. So auctions like that's often why they're there.
But that's why we've also got one of our friends, Charlie, who must know a lot about that we could tap into.
Yeah,
I find that whole thing quite interesting.
I've always wanted to go to a physical auction.
Yeah,
and actually I'm thinking about buying another car from
but some of these,
because I quite enjoyed
those Bonhams ones. I'm pretty sure they're only invite only, so you're only going to get. That's what I find interesting is some of these cars that people. Let's say I came into 50 million quid next week, I might not even get a look in at these auctions.
I'm sure if you had 50 million cash,
you could buy it,
and you could find the right contact. I think we could probably work out a way. Anyway, but we should probably wrap it up for today, I suppose. Have you got any more questions to ask me, or was that it?
At one point in there, I pressed record by accident, so the questions, it was recording what you were saying below the question.
Oh, and then it was like typing.
It was typing it. So I was like,
now we'll have a transcript of the whole podcast as well. I hope you guys have enjoyed this episode. Hopefully I've answered your questions well.
People, obviously maybe I could have asked for people's questions, but I don't have too many followers from your side of things. But
on that,
even if people want to ask questions, I'm always happy to ask them to you, or things that they might want to know.
I think on that, we have started an Instagram page for our podcast. I think it's All Four Wheels. You'll be able to find it by searching that. We'll start posting clips on there from these podcasts, from the video version, and on those videos, that might be a good way for you to comment some questions and to interact with us sort of on a daily basis.
I've seen a couple of comments. Well, you sent one to me saying there's a few people asking questions about me. Yeah, because obviously we've mentioned slightly what I do, but so we can still tap into that.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll leave a link in the show notes and on YouTube and in the description to that Instagram account on this podcast, and feel free to send us a direct message on there if you want to speak to either me or Charlie. And potentially going forward in episodes, we could choose a section. Well, we could just choose like a question a week or question however long it is, where we just answer it, either for you or me or both of us. So hopefully you've enjoyed it. Now, if you're watching on YouTube, hello, thanks so much for watching. If you could like this video and subscribe, that would be amazing, because once we get to 1,000 subscribers, we can actually monetize the YouTube channel and earn a little bit of revenue from the video, which would be really helpful, because we're actually losing money doing this. We're just doing this
out
the kindness of our hearts.
The enjoyment of it. But.
Absolutely. And on Spotify or Apple or wherever you're listening, if you could very kindly give us a 5-star rating. Hopefully it's 5 stars.
I've done it, so you can do it.
Yeah, I think I've probably done one myself as well. I've made 1 million fake accounts.
It's like barbers always look like, I don't know why barbers, but they always do on their own, like TripAdvisor or like Google review, and it's like, fantastic hair, my friend Sammy did this. It's like, you can clearly tell it's the person.
They've actually made accounts to do it. But if you're on any of these listening platforms, such as Spotify or Apple Podcasts, if you could leave us a rating, that's really helpful, because it means that they sort of suggest them a bit more, and we get put up in the rankings, which is really nice. We were number 42 in the UK automotive podcast charts. Now I think we're 150.
We were at one point. You were showing me, because I'm not.
Yeah, we were 42.
We were ahead of some manufacturers who have their own little podcast, or like car magazines.
It's all about the hype. It's all about the ratings. So if you wouldn't mind, we'd really appreciate it. But yes, in the meantime, between episodes, if you want to get hold of either of us, obviously you can message me on my It's Joel Instagram account, but you're more likely to get hold of me or Charlie if you go to the All Four Wheels Instagram account, and you can send us a direct message or comment on one of our reels on there. So thanks Charlie for bringing in the questions. If you guys feel like Charlie missed anything and you want to ask more, do comment on here or in the places I've just mentioned.
Because like I said, obviously I probably know a lot more than some of them will, just from doing things with you and the way things work. So I'd love people to ask a question.
And I'm always showing Charlie obviously the suitcases and suitcases of money that I come back with after every video that I upload. So you know that I'm just a multi-millionaire from doing this.
He flew here today actually.
Yeah, on my private jet. But
he didn't have to sit on the M25 or anything.
No, in my £400 Audi TT that's pulling like a
shaking. Anyway.
So thanks Charlie, I appreciate it. And thank you all for watching, listening, subscribing, all the rest of it. And we'll see you in the next one whenever it will be very soon.
Bye.
Bye.